On this episode of the Red and Gold Report, we're going to be breaking down the Chiefs' amazing win versus the Chargers, and we're going to be updating you on all the recent Chiefs news. Thursday night was one of the best football games that I have seen in a very long time. The storyline of the game was kind of like, well, do you remember swinging on the playground as a kid and one of your friends would be pushing you back and forth all nice, and then they thought it was funny to push you way too fast and you were wondering if you were going to have to jump off or you were going to get wrapped around the upper bar? Yeah, like that was this game. It swung back and forth, faster and faster, leaving all of us Chiefs and Chargers fans wondering who was going to jump off the swing at just the right time. Or actually, are Chargers fans a real thing, or is that just a myth? By the early second quarter, the Chiefs were already up by 10, thanks in large part to 10 first quarter first downs. But then the game swung back the other way, and the Chargers were reeling off 14 points while the Chiefs' D was unable to slow down the Chargers' running backs. And then it swung yet again, with the Chiefs scoring 3, then forcing a fumble on their own 1-yard line. But back the swing headed the other way, and it caused the Chiefs to turn the ball right back, and the Chargers ran it in for a touchdown. And then in the fourth quarter, that's when that swing, it just went crazy. It was going back and forth so fast that I nearly lost my Christmas cookies. Mahomes tossed a 69-yard pass to Kelsey, then a 1-yard pass to Hill to tie the game up with 7 minutes and 45 seconds left. But then it swung back the other direction again towards the Chargers with a Los Angeles drive ending in a touchdown to Keenan Allen. But then the game swung back again in favor of the Chiefs when, after getting the ball back with 2 minutes 30 seconds left, down a touchdown, the Chiefs scored again through the magical powers of Mahomes and Hill and Kelsey. That was followed by a defensive stand that forced the game into overtime, and ultimately it was the Chiefs who jumped off the swing at just the right time at the end with Kelsey's 2 amazing plays in that overtime drive. That was the storyline of the game, just swinging back and forth, wondering who would get that final push on the swing. It was an incredible game. 29 points were scored in the fourth quarter alone. It was a thrilling overtime drive, as long as you were a Chiefs fan. Also adding to the thrill was how often the Chargers kept going for it on fourth down. I mean, they were only 2 for 5 on fourth down, and they would have won the game had they just played conservatively one time and kicked a field goal. Also, Chargers, on a related note, if you're looking to pay a kicker $1 million a year to never use him, even in obvious situations, I'm very available, but I'm definitely not willing to move to LA. This is a great win for the Chiefs against a good team in the Chargers. And hey, real quick, if you want the best Chiefs news and insights brought to you each week, then you got to hit that like and subscribe button on this video to follow the channel. So who was the MVP of the game? Well, it's got to be Travis Kelce, right? Kelce had 191 yards, 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns. It was the 7th most receiving yards by a tight end in a single game in all of NFL history. But it was not just the yards, it was the timing of his big plays. Kelce had a 69-yard reception that broke the Chargers' second half momentum. Even though he was held on the play, he had a 27-yard reception to start the overtime drive. Then he had an unbelievable 34-yard catch that no one could even get a hold of. He ran through all this traffic to win the game in overtime like an absolute boss. He was absolutely fantastic, and he was the MVP of the game. So who else played well on Thursday night? Well, Tyreek Hill was incredible, ending the game with 148 yards, 12 receptions, and 1 touchdown. He had a season-high 92.3% completion rating when the ball came his way. He had a fantastic catch in the third quarter, both having to compensate for an underthrown ball and pass interference. He also had a contested catch for a touchdown in the fourth quarter that showed, yeah, he's way more than just a speed receiver. Fullback Mike Burton converted a 4th and short into a 6-yard touchdown run in the first drive, and also added 20 yards through the air. He doesn't see the field very often, but when he does, he's been grading as the top fullback in the entire NFL. Rookie linebacker Nick Bolton was on fire. He led the team with 14 tackles, led the team with 3 passes defense, and he added a quarterback hit. He deflected a pass into an interception. He forced a fumble that the refs missed somehow. He filled the far side hole for a 3rd down stop in the third quarter. He deflected a pass on a 4th and short, and he showed relentless effort on a fourth quarter blitz that was key. He was all over the place on Thursday night. The offensive line was also fantastic, allowing just one sack. Left guard Joe Tooney did not allow a single sack or pressure, and Lucas Niang, returning from injury, shored up what had become the only weak spot at right tackle. Corner Charvarius Ward was not perfect Thursday night, but only allowed 2 receptions on 6 targets, which that's a good thing. And Patrick Mahomes played well. We're so used to him being otherworldly that a lot of people can't recognize when he just plays great instead of perfect. Did he miss a few throws? Yes, he did. But he also threw for 3 touchdowns, 410 yards, and an 8.7 yard average during an overtime win. I mean, those are amazing numbers. And he was able to push the ball deeper than in some of these recent weeks. He was incredible when it mattered most and was able to keep the ball mostly safe the rest of the game. So with those positives in mind, who struggled on Thursday? Well, Anthony Hitchens played quite poorly. I know I sound as repetitive about this as a top 40 pop song. Come on, a play in the first drive kind of sums up his season. He jumped in the wrong gap to start the play, couldn't recover, didn't even need to be blocked by an offensive lineman, and then he only made the tackle 15 yards down the field. Hitchens allowed a big first down on the second drive of the game. He bit on a pump fake to allow the Chargers a second quarter touchdown. He had a pass interference in the fourth quarter for 15 yards, and he didn't sink deep enough into his zone on another fourth quarter touchdown. Did he intercept the deflected pass that came right into his hands? Sure, but you could have done the same. Along with that, we need to mention that the Chiefs' defense struggled to defend the run, largely due to the defensive line. They allowed 192 yards on the ground with nearly a 5-yard run average. Defensive tackle Chris Jones was out of the game on the COVID list, and Derek Nottie, he just wasn't up for the increase in snaps. Frank Clark and Jerron Reed also really struggled. They could not stop the run and allowed 1.9 rushing yards before contact per carry. That means that before Chargers running backs were even being hit, they were already 2 yards down the field. The defensive line also didn't have a sack or even a tackle for loss in the game. Defensive tackle Tershawn Wharton was probably the only one to play well on a line that was really sorely missing Chris Jones. Some of those positives and negatives out of the way, let's take a few minutes to share a few insights that you may have missed on Thursday. One insight is we need to start wondering what the Chiefs are really thinking about running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Look, I know the coaches keep being really positive about him in press conferences and questions, but the insight here is to ignore their words and pay attention to their actions. Clyde has only 110 carries for the season. I know he's missed a few games, but that only puts him 36th in the league for carries, which is kind of backup numbers. And that's half of what the top 5 backs in the league have gotten. It is no mystery why this has happened. On Thursday night, Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran the ball 9 times with only an average of 3.6 yards. Mahomes had as many yards rushing on one scramble as Clyde had the entire game of regulation. He's played in 9 games this season and has averaged under 4 yards per carry in 6 of those 9 games, with only a long of 17 yards on the ground this year, even though he's playing behind a really solid offensive line. It seems like because he's a former first rounder and he is such a likable guy that nobody is willing to talk about the obvious. But watch how few carries that he is getting moving forward, and you're going to find out what the coaches really think about him. Another insight is this: do not miss how vital Chris Jones is to this defense. Over the last weeks, offenses scored 7, 14, 9, and 9 points against the Chiefs D. But then Jones is out and suddenly the defense gives up 28 points. That's not a coincidence. Everything the Chiefs defense does starts with Jones. Moving on to recent news in Chiefs Kingdom, the huge news is, of course, the Chiefs won their 7th straight game. It's impossible to overstate the value of this particular win versus the Chargers. Entering the game, the Chiefs were either going to be up 2 games in the division or down half a game. I know that sounds crazy, and this was no easy match. Justin Herbert actually entered the game with a better statistical season than Patrick Mahomes. He's a good quarterback, and it was an away game. Huge win for the Chiefs. In other news, we all watched Chargers tight end Donald Parham sustain that terrible head injury in the first quarter. I mean, he headed out in a stretcher. The latest news is that he's in stable condition and going through testing. It was awful, and man, our prayers really go out to him. In other news, defensive tackle Chris Jones, linebacker Willie Gay, and wide receiver Josh Gordon They were all out on Thursday on the COVID list, and they're expected back by the next game. So is L'Jarius Sneed, who is grieving the tragic loss of his brother and missed Thursday night. In other news, Lucas Niang returned to the lineup on Thursday, helping displace our struggling third stringer at right tackle. That's good news. But in other news, Patrick Mahomes' little brother Jackson Mahomes, he's making an excellent case for the most unlikable person in Kansas City. After not being treated like the pseudo-celebrity he believes he is, Jackson lashed out at a local bar online, and their response was epic. They released a letter online that included these gems of lines, like this. Oftentimes, people with unearned status and a sense of entitlement think they are above the rules and will lash out at the employee enforcing them. They also said, "We survived a global pandemic, we'll survive your ego." Man, I gotta love it. I love entitled people getting made fun of. And finally, the Chiefs will play the Steelers the Sunday after Christmas, meaning they're going to get a nice long rest before the next game. The Steelers, they do have talent, but they're struggling through Ben Roethlisberger playing like he's 80 years old and some real immaturity that's hurting the team. So this game should really be a win for our Chiefs. That's it for the Red and Gold Report. Take a second to hit the like and subscribe. All of those good buttons to follow this channel, follow this page. Thanks for watching, and go Chiefs!